do have a pretty distinguished group here in our panel of not only TSX and TSXV companies, but also very important projects in Mexico. And certainly they will drive they certainly are the engine of development for Mexico going forward, particularly from the mining sector. And as we know, mining spills over into so many other sectors. They are Mexico's next top mines. So let me introduce myself a little bit here before I ask my fellow panelists to join in an introduction. As Isabel mentioned, I'm Dean McPherson, Global Head of Business Development for the TSX and TSX Venture. Everybody in mining knows those symbols quite well, TSX and TSXV. We are the leading global mining platform in terms of equity markets for mining companies. 43% of global public mining companies are listed on our exchanges. And as a result, most money that's raised in the equity markets come through our market. 37 cents of every dollar actually that's raised by global public mining companies are raised through our marketplace. And that represents some 52% of total financings done in terms of equity financings by mining companies. Last year, mining companies on our platform raised $7.5 billion. And we have a total of 1,146 issuers on both the big board and the junior board of TSX Venture on our marketplace. And those companies did 1,642 financings last year. So it was a very good year for mining. Surprisingly, I think all but the bravest of us could not have predicted what a bummer year we had last year in spite of the pandemic that hit us after the PDAC in March. So we're very happy about that. And so far this year has certainly not let up. It's been a great year as well. I mentioned earlier that Mexico is a big part of our mining sector, and certainly for the leading global mining platform, of course, Mexico is very important as well. We have 132 issuers, or about 12% of our issuers with properties and operations in Mexico. About 370 properties actually represented on our exchange are in Mexico. So significant, only third behind the United States, actually. And those companies raised close to 2 billion last year. Of that 7.5 billion, close to 2 billion of those that was raised by companies with operations in Mexico. Of course, we also have one of our new partners or new clients here today in Gato Silver, which is the newest project that joined our platform with operations in Mexico. Very happy about that, and we're very proud. And certainly we'll do everything we can to ensure shareholders and investors are happy in the next year, actually. And I'm sure Steve will have something to say about that later. So with that said, that's me. I would like to invite my fellow panelists to introduce themselves and what they're doing in Mexico and what brought them here today. So Brad, why don't we take you first?
Thank you very much, Dean. And I have just 4 slides to introduce our company. So Endeavour Silver Corp is a company that I founded for the express purpose of acquiring strategic silver and gold assets in Mexico in 2003. We acquired our first non-producing mine in 2004 in Guanaceví, Durango, and came to production in 2005. So we've now been operating in Mexico for over 16 years. Endeavour today is considered to be a mid-tier producer of silver and gold. We own and operate 3 high-grade underground silver gold mines in Mexico. And there's really 4 key catalysts to drive value for our shareholders and our stakeholders. Optimizing our operations. We've been in tougher times, as you know, and through reducing our operating costs, we've been able to significantly boost our free cash flow. Perhaps the most obvious means of creating value is our best in sector organic growth profile with not 1 but 2 new discoveries in Mexico that we'd like to take to production. All of the ore bodies that we've developed, all of the mines that we put into production were as a result of our exploration team's successful exploration results, our virgin discoveries, and we continue to explore to not only replace reserves, but make new discoveries. So Those are the main metrics. All of our core assets are currently located in Mexico. Our head office is here in Vancouver, British Columbia, and we have a portfolio of world-class exploration projects in northern Chile. Today's panel is really focused on growth engines of development, and for that, we would point to our first development project, the Terronera discovery in Jalisco State. It's currently reporting about an 80 million ounce silver equivalent resource, of which 66 million ounces is in reserves. It's through the permitting stage. We're in the final stages of a feasibility study expected in mid-summer, and we will then go to our board for a development decision. Terronera is basically approximately $100 million capital investment, actually closer to 200 and some odd $million over the life of the mine. And it will have a very significant minimum 10-year impact, not only on the company, but obviously on our local communities and even on the state of Jalisco. So that's a quick summary on Endeavour. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Moving along, Eric, do you want to go next?
Thanks, Dean. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So, Silvercrest is currently building the Las Chispas mine that's located in Sonora, Mexico. This is considered to be one of the highest grade silver gold deposits in the world. So that in itself is quite impressive. We've had a great ride over the last 5 years, from basically zero to having a market cap of over $1 billion, as we keep putting out stellar grades from our drill bit and keep growing this asset. We just put out our feasibility study on the Las Chispas project, and that has robust economics. You're looking at a current resource of 138 million ounces silver equivalent. When I say silver equivalent, that's just gold and silver, and that's at 86.9 to 1 in ratio. And of the 138 million ounces silver equivalent, contained within that is 95 million ounces in reserves. So that in itself is a huge achievement. The Las Chispas district, which we 100% control, is a classic low sulfidation epithermal system with now 45 veins being defined. This is a great district. I like the spacing of the veins. They're about 100 to 150 meters apart. Great way to access and use shared infrastructure to develop this project. Our timeline is today we are in construction of the processing plant under a fixed maximum price contract with Ausenco, which is a world-class builder and EPC contractor. Along with that, we continue to drive underground. We currently have over 9 kilometers of underground workings, and of that, 1.5 kilometers is in vein drifting. And at some point after COVID-19, you guys got to come and see this. I was down on site 2 weeks ago, touching up to 100 kilograms per ton silver equivalent underground. And it ran for about 25 meters along the drift. So these are crazy numbers in this industry. These are the kind of numbers that the Spanish were looking for in the 17 and 1800s. So look for us to construct the mine up until mid next year and do startup production. We hope to have revenue next year. Our target is around $30 million in revenue by the end of the year. We have spent a lot of time on our COVID-19 protocols. This is serious business, guys, dealing with this. Unfortunately, it's going to cost us about an extra $15 million to put in a isolated camp for up to 640 construction workers. We're in phase 1 of that camp right now, so we're currently housing about 400 people on site as construction continues. And you thought that was the exciting story. It's really about the growth. So beyond the feasibility, which I feel is stale dated now, We are working on the next 10 to 20 million ounces in reserves, which we hope to get in before we start production and expand our resource. We also have what we're calling a satellite deposit near Las Chispas that may play a key role in the future in expanding the mill for better and more capacity at Las Chispas. Thank you. Stay tuned. Look for more high-grade results this year.
Thank you, Eric. Certainly, Silvercrest is one of the flagship stories in terms of great companies that have done really well for investors, and congratulations on the progress. Jason from Orla Mining.
Thank you, Dean. As introduced, I'm Jason Simpson. I'm the president and CEO of Orla Mining. I'm happy to give you just a very brief introduction to our company. Orla has the right formula for value creation. We have assets, the team, and the support we need to deliver results. Starting with the assets, we have over 10 million gold ounces spread across two nations, Mexico and Panama. In terms of our team, we have a group of industry veterans who have found, built, and operated mines globally. And finally, as always and needed, we have the support of a reputable board, shareholders, including companies like Newmont and Agnico Eagle, individuals like Pierre Lassonde, and a group of institutional investors that have supported us from the beginning. And finally, and most importantly, we have the support of the communities where we operate. With those three things in combination, we can convert the resources we have into a benefit for all. One of those benefits has been reflected on the Toronto Stock Exchange with an over 553% return for our investors over the past 2 years. We've started our first mine. It is financed, permitted, enhanced, and currently under construction, and we expect to pour gold by the end of the year. Orla is gaining a reputation for delivery, and we strive to be a multi-mine producer that generates benefit for all of our stakeholders, which include our employees, our communities, our shareholders, and the nations where we operate. Thanks for the opportunity to introduce the company, and I look forward to being part of the panel.
Thank you so much, Jason. We'll move on to Ralph from Golin.
Yeah, thank you, Dean, fellow panel members. I'm Ralph Shearing, President and CEO of Telson Mining. I founded this company quite some time ago with a vision of going out and finding a deposit, building it into a good resource reserve. And we've done that down in Mexico. We're actually producing at one mine and we're building another mine at this point in time. So our Campo Morado mine, we purchased from Nearstar. Nearstar put over $500 million into this project. And when Nearstar pulled out of mining altogether, they sold this project. We purchased it for $20 million and got it back up in operation. We're currently producing lead, zinc, primarily zinc, with some gold and silver as well at Campo Morado. We're producing around 2,000 tons per day. The operation is running very smoothly, quite well. And we expect good things coming from that mine in the future with some new technologies that we might be able to introduce soon. Our second project, and I would actually say this is our first project because it's our flagship Tahuehueto project located in northwestern Durango. It's a district scale project. We've been exploring it for quite some time and have developed a good solid reserve and a resource. The reserves gives us a 10-year mine life at around 1,000 tons per day. That project is 50% built and we're just finalizing our funding to complete that construction. We hope to have it up and running by the end of 2021, producing 1,000 tons per day. And we expect that project, after repayment of debt, et cetera, should produce free cash flows up in the area of $20 million or more. The project itself, Tahuehueto, as I said, district scale project. We've only explored a couple of veins along the main exposed structures. There is extremely good exploration potential. We actually envision being able to bring this project to 2,000 to 3,000 tons per day over the coming years with exploration success, which should come very easily. Many targets are there. We have over 8 structures to go after. Really have only explored on one. So we see very good things coming for Tabaweto, as well as Campo Morada with future exploration and improvements in that mining operation. That's a quick summary of our company.
Thanks, Ralph. Warren from Golden Minerals. My wires got crossed there. I meant Warren from Golden. So why don't we have Warren, then Taj, then we wrap up with Stephen, and then we move into the discussion. So Warren, your floor.
Thank you, Dean. I'm glad to be here. As introduced, my name is Warren Rain. I'm president and CEO of Golden Minerals Company. Now, we are, I think, the most recent new gold silver producer in Mexico. We began producing from our Rodeo open pit gold mine in January this year. No, we just had our first pour at the end of January. We'll produce about 14,000 ounces of gold from Rodeo this year at a cash cost well less than $1,000 per ounce. And, we'll be continuing to ramp up production at Rodeo through the next couple of months, and we'll hit full production by the end of the quarter. Now, we also have an underground high-grade silver and gold mine at Velardenia. We plan to restart production at Velardenia perhaps at the end of the year. And one interesting aspect of the Velardenia operation is we're planning to install the biooxidation plant to get better gold recovery. It's very interesting technology, new technology. I think we'll talk about that later. It'll be the first biooxidation plant operating in Mexico, as far as I know. And we have a strong pipeline of advanced and drill stage projects located throughout northern Mexico. We also have projects in Argentina and the US and Nevada. Our total resource base is about 80 million silver equivalent ounces in measured and indicated, and about 40 million silver equivalent ounces in inferred resources among the various projects. And we just announced exceptional results from our first drill program in the Oquiva district in Chihuahua, a district scale project. We discovered a new high-grade gold silver vein and demonstrated significant gold silver hits on the other veins in the district. And we're looking forward to carrying on exploration there as well. We have about 155 million shares outstanding, about 130 million market capitalization at present. We're emerging as a profitable gold silver producer based on our operations in Mexico. And we're committed to expanding our operations in Mexico. And we recognize the strong, good working relationship we have with the local communities and with the state and federal government of Mexico. Now, Mexico continues to be a very favorable jurisdiction for mining, and especially in the states of Durango and Chihuahua, where we operate. I look forward to being part of the panel, and thanks for the chance to introduce the company, Dean.
Thank you, Warren. Taj, you're up next from Discovery.
Perfect. Thank you, Dean. As introduced, I'm Taj Singh, President and CEO of Discovery Metals. We are operating solely in Mexico, and we're focused on silver. Our flagship is the Cordero Silver Project, located in Chihuahua State, and one of the most robust mineral belts in the world. We're advancing Cordero through an aggressive drill program, almost 100,000 meters to be drilled over 18 months, and which is one of the largest drill programs in the silver industry worldwide. And that'll culminate in a brand new resource and PEA for the project later this year. Our current resource area represents less than 5% of our total 100% owned land package at Cordero. So we're looking forward to developing many new targets and drill testing them and continuing to fill the pipeline and really bring Cordero, bring it to a future of where it becomes a silver district, which we think it has the potential of becoming. So kind of what makes the company different and unique? It's really the size and scale of our project. Cordero is one of the world's largest undeveloped silver projects, with close to 600 million ounces of silver alone and over 1 billion ounces of silver equivalent. And we offer obviously very exceptional leverage to the price of silver. And in the silver space, there's very limited large and scalable assets in the silver space, especially in good jurisdictions. And the reason is there's very few primary silver open pit mines. Most of them are underground mines, so that you don't really see the resource expansion you get with open pit mines. when silver price goes up. For example, if you take our project and go from $20 silver to $25 silver, you increase the resource size by over 500 million ounces silver equivalent. If you go from 25 to 35, you increase it another 300 million ounces of silver equivalent. So obviously the leverage is pretty substantial there. Location, we're located, like I said, with fantastic surrounding infrastructure, 10 kilometers off a major highway, several power lines in the vicinity, 45-minute drive from Parral, the historic mining town of Parral, and about an hour and a half from Chihuahua City. The terrain is perfect for an eventual mine, flat, remote land, and within about a couple hundred kilometers of us, there's 10 operating mines. So definitely in the right area. And Chihuahua is a fantastic business to do, a fantastic state to do business in. We have very good relations with our host communities and the politicians, both at the local and state level. And then as a last note, I want to note that we love Mexico as a place to do business. Several members of our senior management and board are from Mexico and live in Mexico, so it's not a case of foreigners coming to the country. I personally have been working in Mexico for over 10 years. And honestly, I love the country and it's a second home to me. So I'm very proud to say that. Again, thank you for having us.
Great. Thank you, Taj. And Stephen, I guess you're batting close here. You're closing up for us.
Well, thank you, Dean. I'm Steve Orr, and I'm the CEO for Gato Silver. And Gato Silver is a silver exploration, development, and production company. And we have ownership in an entirely new silver and zinc-rich mineral district in southern Chihuahua State in Mexico. And over the last 10 years, we've acquired a mineral rights package that totals over 103,000 contiguous hectares of mineral rights. And on these mineral rights, we've been able to discover 14 separate zones of mineralization. And in 2014, we brought in a Japanese refining company, Dowa Metals and Mining, as a joint venture partner to help with the financing. And with that financing, we were able to construct and commission our first mine on one of the 14 mineralized zones. It's called Cerro Los Gatos. And we did all of this while remaining private. However, last October, we completed an initial public offering on the TSX and the NYSE. The Cerro Los Gatos mine now has just completed its commissioning phase, and it is now cash flow positive. I'm very pleased to report. The company IPO'd at a market capitalization of just under 400 million. And as of yesterday, our market capitalization is now just under $1 billion. Thank you.
Oh, that's very impressive, Stephen. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. We're right on time, I believe, or just a little bit over. So we may be able to squeeze in a couple of questions at the end if they pop up. So let me get right to the first question for our panel discussion here. There's a lot of angst, about going forward, and certainly last year there were a lot of angst in the Q1 and leading up to the lockdown. Certainly after PDAC. Of course, I mentioned at the start that we had a really good year. I think everybody was quite surprised and happy that we had such a great year. But looking forward, what are you thinking? What are you guys seeing out there? I know a lot of you have been in the marketplace meeting with investors over the past 12 months. So, and your own, experience and knowledge in space. What is the general outlook and your perception of what's to come here in the medium term in mining and in Mexico mining to be particular, if you wish to go like that? Why don't we, I'll put that first to Brad, and then we give the other panelists a chance to chime in.
Thanks, Dean. Clearly, most metals have entered into a bull market in the last 2 years. So we now have a tailwind for the first time in many years, which is great to see. I'll speak only to gold and silver. Gold is primarily a monetary metal, very little in terms of industrial demand. And so its main value drivers are monetary, and primarily the incredible record low global interest rates, the amount of cash on the sidelines looking for diversification, and the fact that there is the potential for looming inflation with massive government infrastructure programs, COVID recovery programs. So I think the outlook for gold is better than base metals. And that's because the value drivers are different than a typical commodity cycle. Silver is special. Silver, which is our primary commodity, is both a precious metal and an industrial metal. In fact, you can look at two main drivers. I've already touched on the silver as a precious metal and the effect of monetary metrics on higher and higher silver prices. So let's turn our attention to industrial demand and why silver should outperform even gold in this next cycle. Silver is a green metal. You can't have solar power without silver. You can't have electric vehicles without silver. You can't have 5G telephonics without silver. And when you look at the 10-year forecast for growth in those three sectors alone, they should add at least another 200 million ounces of demand per year in a billion-ounce market, 20% growth in demand just from the industrial side over the next 10 years. So we're looking at a pretty special metal. And for that reason, I think silver will outperform, and Endeavour is very well positioned to benefit from that.
Thank you, Brad. Anyone else want to chime in? Jason, do you want to add anything?
Sure. I agree with Brad, in his reflection upon what gold is used related to the economy and fiat currencies and so on. I think most of the panel have been industry advocates for a very long time, myself 25 years, and probably go for another 25. But what I've noticed most recently is another cycle. And we've seen many cycles in our industries and in various commodities. And we're once again being reminded, the world is being reminded of the necessity for tangible commodities. But there are some differences I see in the world ahead. The differences in how we harvest those resources need to be in a way that has a net positive benefit to society. We now understand that although these resources are needed globally, they need to be extracted in a responsible way, in a way that the benefit far exceeds the cost. And we'll need to use our ingenuity and innovation to do that. We also need to keep in mind, and I think Brad touched on this, that not all commodities are the same. Although many of them are necessary in the world, they have different functions in our society. Iron, for example, builds many of the cities that we all live in. Copper will be the backbone for an electrified world. Potash enhances the crops that can enable us to grow more food. Lithium, like silver, is used in solar panels. And gold, as Brad pointed out, has served as a store of wealth for over 6,000 years. And it's fundamentally different than the paper currencies of the world that we've relied on since 1971. So I believe the outlook for many of these sectors, albeit for different reasons, is good because they're the elements of the future world.
Couldn't agree more. Certainly, thank you for those comments, Jason. Anyone else wants to jump in? Taj, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, both Brad and Jason really touched on it. From the precious metals point of view, there's no opportunity cost to hold precious metals right now. You're not making anything from bonds or cash. Asset inflation is underway, and gold and silver have always been the best hedge against asset inflation. So that's pretty simple. Specific to silver, which we're involved with, and just add a couple points to what Brad talked about, is it's the double whammy of the industrial. It's an industrial metal and a monetary metal, and the industrial demand's increasing anyway, as Brad pointed out, and gave you he talked about the deficit that's going to be there, and it's substantial. But on top of that, if you layer on the investment demand increase, that deficit rises almost exponentially, because the silver market, the silver investment universe, is 1/10 the size roughly of the gold investment universe. So if you get the industrial demand increase, cause a deficit there, and an investment demand increase, that's why consistently, time over time, silver has outperformed gold in any bull markets. Gold is probably steadier, it is, but when precious metals really go, silver outperforms gold. And if you look at, there's less liquidity, so marginal buying and selling really helps. And silver prices are up about 80% or so since 2018. And if you look at the past 3 bull markets, silver went up 600% on average. So I think it's pretty clear we're in the early innings of what should be a really good ride.
Okay. I think we'll just close off this section with a word from Stephen, since Stephen, you mentioned your IPO last fall. So you have perhaps one of the most recent touch points with investors, global investors, in marketing that IPO. Based on the success of the IPO and post-IPO, Gato has been performing. I would think investors would agree mostly with our panelists. Do you concur?
I do concur, and I can really, that is a real life example. I mean, Gato Silver, we just completed the IPO at the end of October. The company's entire asset base is in Mexico, and it's comprised entirely of the Los Gatos district. And we saw particular interest from institutional interest because of our silver focus. So 70% of our resource is silver and only silver. And generally, the market believes that we're on the threshold of a global commodity super cycle. And a lot of it's driven by government spending all around the world. And in general, for the last decade, commodities have pretty much been out of favor, but now they're enjoying a strong rebound. It's certainly been helped by demand from China because it's deploying massive fiscal stimulus programs. And I think that particularly applies to base metals and battery metals. But gold demand, this is supporting the other comments, has benefited from its safe haven status as a hedge against expected inflation. And I think we're going to see these massive global recovery programs that focusing on job creation and not on inflation control. And I think silver in particular will enjoy increasing and sustained demand. And it's because of the previous comments of its dual role as a safe haven metal like gold, but more importantly, its increasing industrial use in green energy initiatives in particular. So I believe Mexico, being the world's largest producer of silver, is poised to benefit materially from silver's increasing demand. I mean, Mexico alone produces 25% of the annual global silver production.
No, great. Thank you, Stephen. It's great to get a perspective from the investor side. Last year, we had a lot of conversations and questions about, why was the market doing so well, especially in at a time when most people, I think at the end of March, were sort of under a rock, hoping that it would go away, with the pandemic. And certainly a lot of the questions were coming in as to why. And one of the things that we noticed is that changed last year was the return of the generalist investors. It wasn't just the gold bugs and the mining bugs that were seeking out mining names, but the generalist investors, retail investors, new investors were looking to mining again. And that was certainly great to see. And certainly a lot of it had to do with how mining has changed over the past 3 or 4 years. I think we've made a lot of strides in other areas that are now bearing fruit. The industry has transformed the way we do business, the way we manage companies, and the way we communicate with our stakeholders. And we get to some of that later on. But Stephen, you ended on Mexico. And I think that's a nice segue into our next question here. Just how great is Mexico to do business? And no one is listening, so you can certainly be frank here. How would you, earlier this afternoon, we had a panel that touched on that. Well, they asked the participants to give a grade to operating in Mexico. A 1 out of 5 or 1 to 5 grade Mexico as how great is it as a jurisdiction to do business. I'll give our group here a chance to comment on that, and any particular areas you wish to touch on, please. But community relations, permitting, the usual suspects. You're all international executives who have quite a wide range of experience across different countries in Latin America in particular, and certainly globally as well. So why don't I put a first question here to Eric from Silvercrest? I don't be biased, Eric. You're on mute, I think. You're on mute. Eric, you're on mute.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, since we just put out our feasibility study on Las Chispas and in northern Mexico, I've been on a lot of marketing meetings, and there's probably been 60 marketing meetings since last week, and to discuss the feasibility. And of the 60 meetings, I'd say 5 ask about Mexico. Okay, so how safe is it to work in Mexico? How is the Mexican government, as far as cooperating with the mining industry? And to tell you the truth, I feel very safe in Mexico. I asked one of my VPs in Mexico one time, I said, this is a great place to work and I feel really safe. And he turned to me and he said, that's because we protect you. So, but really, I've been all over Mexico for the last 20 years. I've had very, very few threats on me, and it would be the same as in Canada. If you want to walk the back streets of East Hastings at 2 a.m. in Vancouver, you're going to get threatened. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. It's, the safety around Mexico is all about common sense. Okay. So, yeah. And, there's always a challenge for investors to get their head around that. I call it the Rand McNally effect. If you remember as a kid, I'm pushing 60 now, guys, but yeah, we didn't have Google Earth. We had these books called Rand McNally atlases. Yeah. And you get to Wyoming and you're looking at Wyoming, and then the next page you turn to, it's Mexico, and it's smaller than Wyoming. Okay. So everybody had this perception in my day that Mexico it's smaller than Wyoming. And I've been to Wyoming, and so if a crime is committed in the South, then doesn't that apply to you in the North? Because you're so small. Okay. So I get a lot of those questions, but really, the investors just want to know, from a investment standpoint and a global standpoint, do you like working in Mexico? I trust you running the company for Silvercrest, and I got to trust your opinion on Mexico. And I really like working in Mexico. I feel it's safe. The corruption people talk about all the time. In over 20 years in Mexico, I've only been approached once for a couple of $100. Okay. So, there's that willingness for investors to put their money into Mexico based on the CEOs on this panel today.
No, thank you. That's great to hear. Great to get the feedback from your marketing trip too. That's significant. If you have 5 people asking that question now out of 60 guys you met. Warren, what's your experience like?
I want to focus a bit on the operating costs in Mexico, and that's what to me makes it, among other qualities such as what Eric mentioned. The low operating cost in Mexico is head and shoulders one of the biggest reasons to focus, especially on the exploration side and even on the operation side, on Mexico as opposed to other countries. Now we have projects in Argentina and Nevada as well, and just to use as an example, the cost of diamond drilling between the 3 jurisdictions, Mexico is one third of the cost of diamond drilling in Mexico compared to the U.S. Argentina is very close to the U.S. cost, maybe slightly less, but it's at least half as expensive in Mexico compared to Argentina. So you can drill 2 or 3 times as many holes. If you can drill 2 or 3 times as many holes with the same amount of money, you have that much more chance of success. And in an area that geologically is phenomenal in terms of the endowment for silver especially, and gold as well. But to me, that's head and shoulders the reason to be operating in Mexico at as opposed to some of the other jurisdictions. So we're still very bullish on Argentina as well, and there's great potential in Nevada, but you just don't get the bang for your buck in the other jurisdictions. So that's my most important takeaway, Dean, on that.
No, I appreciate that. Anyone else wants to add anything to that? Taj?
Yeah, I've been able to work at various regions in the world as an engineer, and then I was also a mining analyst for a couple of years with a large bank. So we got to go all over the place and due diligence on assets all over the world. And so I can probably add some good color to it. And definitely I agree with Warren. The OPEX and even capital costs of Mexico are extremely competitive. They have gone up materially. I have to add that compared to what I've seen over the past decade, but it's definitely gone up across the world. But definitely those things stick out. I think a big part of Mexico is the culture. Mining is part of the culture. There's a deep pool of skilled and knowledgeable labor. They definitely know mining. Mining's in their blood. Another thing that doesn't get brought up a lot, but I actually feel that permitting is actually very clear and straightforward in Mexico, provided it's in a majority of the country, it's very clear and straightforward. You're able to get drill permits in several weeks, and it's a pretty transparent process. Environmental considerations, I think, were maybe more lax before, but they're coming up a lot more. And I feel like a lot of Canadian and American companies that go there are applying their high levels standards of environmental considerations anyway. But I think the government is also, this administration is also keeping it a focus, which I think overall is fantastic to keep them in line with the rest of the world. So those are my couple, and obviously geologically extremely fertile ground, #1 silver producer and top 10 producer of many other metals and minerals. So it's a fantastic place to operate in. Yep.
Thank you. Stephen, you have a pretty big operation in Mexico, and what your experience obviously has been positive, but would you also give a 5 out of 5 as Eric did?
Well, I think my comments are very similar to Taj's comments. I've been in the industry over 40 years. And during that time, I've worked on development projects in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Tanzania, the Philippines, and Colombia, and now Mexico. And I can say that in aggregate, Mexico is in the top tier as a favorable jurisdiction. I mean, every jurisdiction over time has its challenges, and they either create a favorable or unfavorable environment for mining investment. A stable government and strong leadership in a country, I think that has a huge influence on mining investment, particularly foreign mining investment, and how it's viewed by the industry and the global investment community. Almost every one of the jurisdictions that I've worked in has gone through periods where their investment environment was unfavorable. And now I said almost all these jurisdictions, because at least during my time in the industry, Mexico has always been viewed as a favorable investment destination. And it's because of the importance of the mining industry to the country. It is really part of Mexico's DNA. And there's been consistent domestic and international resource investment because the industry is welcomed. And there's relative certainty that as long as a company is attentive to its environmental, social, and governance performance, it'll be supported.
Well said. Thank you. Jason, anything you want to add before we leave this one?
No, all I can offer, Dean, is maybe to summarize some of the points that have been made, and I might push back a little bit to our panelists. You know, my view is that there are some distinguishing features, which Taj and Stephen have pointed out, related to culture, that I'll mention as a differentiating factor. But let's talk geologically. I think in all of the countries I've worked in around the world, Mexico is not that much different in terms of the geological prospect that you could have. Lots of parts of the world host the elements that we need. And I'll even say that the costs have been rising in Mexico. The cost to build and operate with electricity, fuel, steel, taxes, and so on. So I would like we would say in most jurisdictions, I would say there's room for improvement. So 4 out of 5, let's say. But it is 4 out of 5. It is a top tier destination. We are constructing our second mine in 10 years there for a reason. And I think it's the reason that Taj and Stephen pointed out, which we would all agree with on the panel. There is a differentiating factor in Mexico, and it is the mining culture. It's a nation that understands the benefit that our industry can bring, and so has set up a lot of the processes that we need to build and operate mines. The permitting process that Taj talked about, in relation to Stephen's comment that if you do it properly, you'll be welcome. And so that means that investors can invest in companies like ours that can build and operate mines. Sometimes what holds Mexico back is its instability. There is instability related to blockades and security threats. There's sometimes political and taxation instability. And I think that instability is exacerbated in the larger market space. A number of us as leaders of mining companies in Mexico often have conversations to dampen people's fears about those types of instability, convincing them that we can navigate through that instability and make sure that their investment is returned. And so I think it's like a number of jurisdictions where we work that it has a lot of endearing features and some areas to improve. And it is unlike many of the jurisdictions that we would stay away from, in that you simply cannot get business done. So I'm happy to be in Mexico as long as I have been.
So you're saying a 4 or 3? I'm trying to gauge.
I would give it a 4.
Okay, so I think we can always have some room for improvement. And spoiler alert, I think we'll touch on that a little bit further into our conversation this afternoon, and just how some ideas around getting us to that 5. So let's move on to a topic that you can't get away from these days. It seems like I don't think you can have a conversation publicly about mining or privately in many instances without bringing up ESG. The environmental, social, and governance aspects of management, which I would put forward that mining companies have always had a pretty strong record. I used to work for years, maybe 10 years or so in my first career as a young engineer, civil engineer with Alcoa. And this whole concept of ESG, it just flabbergasted me that people talk about ESG in mining as if it's a new concept. This is it's fascinating. I wanted your input here and how this newfound recognition and this, around ESG and the way we report it, how is it impacting your business in terms of, your communication with the community that you operate in, and also with investors? What's your ESG strategy like, really? Who do we want to start with? Ralph, do you want to start?
Thanks, Dean. I agree with you on your points there. ESG has been followed by mining companies for a long period of time. We work to industry standard practices. You have to be able to continue to operate in your jurisdictions. So certainly there's more eyes on the environmental side of things, the green energy. Telson, for example, its remote project Tabahueto is going to require gas or power generation on site, and we're moving to gas generation to get away from the diesel footprint of carbon. So it will help a lot. It actually is less expensive in the long run to use gas. So that's one thing we're looking at. Both at Campo Morado and Tabahueto, we're investigating possibilities for solar power generation. So all of that is being looked at, where we are cognizant of what is required from your investors and from the world to be a greener company. So we're certainly working along those lines. And governance, absolutely. All public companies have to have extremely good governance. The better that governance is, the better chance of returning a profit to your shareholders. So I think that's a strong part of all public companies in mining in Mexico.
Do you gentlemen find that investors are now, demanding ESG to be a part of your proposition? Why don't we? Who wants to take that? Eric, you want to go?
Sure, you bet. So, Dean and audience, we've been in the Sonora Valley for over 15 years. I'll touch on the social and the governance and how it applies to our investors and the market here. So, having been in the Valley for 15 years, we're well integrated into the communities and we're well respected. We're the largest employer in the Valley, and have been for almost 15 years now. So really, for me, it's about relationship. I'm originally a rancher from Montana. So I have actually ranched with the guys in the Valley. This is a big agricultural and ranching area in Sonora. And drank tea with them, coffee, had barbecues, campfires and everything. So, it's executive boots on the ground. I don't sit in my ivory tower in Mexico. Every chance I can get, I go to Mexico, quite frustrated with COVID-19. I love hiking in the Sonoran Desert. I'm a geologist and a mining engineer, but the geologist comes out in me when I get on the ground. Okay, we got to go look at something. And I take community members with me. I mean, we have a very open policy at Las Chispas as we're building this mine with communities. We've had several tours of municipalities coming out. This is pre-COVID. Now we're locked down to essential business only at this time. But yeah, it's if you got a takeaway on the ESG on the social side, Silvercrest has been doing it for 15 years. Now we just are documenting it and our success around it. Take away one thing, guys. Early on in the success story in the Sonora Valley, we set up a nonprofit organization along with the community to handle all aspects of, the voice, social media, the donations beyond what the company is doing. And really, there's a committee, a board of directors that meet. I go to that meeting myself once a year. They have a budget, and it really captures the sense of how you're going to complete, the 3 top projects in the best interest of the community, not the perception that you're donating materials or money to a specific group. So that's who they represent. Gets away from a lot of conflict, guys. And this has been quite successful for us. So that's on the social side of the ESG. And what our investors are looking for is that, that boots on the ground from me and my word back saying, I just 2 weeks ago, I was down on site. I went and saw 2 mayors in the community, social distancing, masks on, to tell them where we're at with the project and what do they need. So we went through a needs list and see what's reasonable to help them with. We've been very, very vocal in educating them on COVID-19 and preventions, and they're very grateful for that. And that's what my investors and I think the market want to see, Dean. As far as governance, I spent a lot of time on compensation. Okay, so, and this is executive compensation all the way through, and having peer groups, and I think that's what the market wants to see, is that we're responsible on the corporate governance side, and that is a key aspect of investors. There's a lot of funds now that are requiring that you have a scorecard for an ESG number in order for them to even to be on the radar, for potential investments.
Interesting. Thank you, Eric. Brad, do you want to tap in?
Yeah, thanks, Dean. I'd like to start by saying that it's not mining companies who recently discovered ESG. It's the investment.
Very well said.
And, well, when we arrived in Guanaceví in 2003, it didn't take anything more than common sense to realize that for us to fulfill our business plan and create value for our stakeholders, we need to do some things with the community, not for the community, with the community. And this is right up Eric's alley as well. You'll understand what I'm saying. There was no nurse in Guanaceví, no doctor, no clinic, no ATM, no bank, no paved roads, no secondary school, but there is now. And it wasn't built by the government, and it wasn't a handout to the community. What we did, recognizing that to fulfill our business plans, we had to figure out this common sense aspect of our impact on the local community, was we met and built relationships with the local leaders. And to this day, we continue to meet regularly. We do annual wish lists in terms of how we can create more benefit for the local communities. And through private-public partnerships is basically what we do. We form a partnership with the community, either with the local ejidos on some projects or the local municipality in terms of other projects. And that's how we get projects done, because when those projects are finished, the community, having played a key role in completing those projects, have pride of ownership and accountability, which handouts don't give you. So I think mining has always dealt in some way with ESG. I think the latest focus is really some of our legacy issues, primarily tailings. And that's really what brought ESG back to the fore for investors. And I think everybody on this panel has historically acted responsibly in their mining projects. So we work to the highest standards. We work to Canadian standards. We work to global standards. And we sometimes bring Mexico along for the ride. When we arrived in Mexico, there may have been environmental standards, but they certainly weren't enforced, but they are now. And I think that's the leadership of primarily foreign investors in the mining sector.
Very interesting perspective. Stephen, as one of the larger companies here, would love to hear your take on this.
Well, I would concur with the previous comments that have been made by all of the panelists here. We have currently just over 600 employees that are working at Los Gatos. And we've been very attentive to make sure that most of that employment is from Mexico. In fact, 99% of our employees reside in Mexico, and 84% of them reside in Chihuahua State. And that's important for us. It is a priority. But we know that, it's not just about employment. I mean, we believe that we have an obligation to make people's lives better. So there's only one ejido that is close to the project. It's about 8 kilometers away. But we built the first full-time medical clinic in that ejido. And we then entered into a contract with Mexico's Social Services, and they staff it full-time with their doctors. And so that clinic is managed by the community. It has become somewhat of a regional clinic now and services smaller communities around the project as well. We annually support the local school in the community. We provide educational materials. We also provide annual scholarships for students to attend the University of Chihuahua. And we've helped the redevelopment of the community water system. We wanted to ensure that all the residents had access to sustainable source of potable water. And these are all projects that were done with the communities, which the communities manage themselves. And that's, I think Brad's point was very important. You just don't give out handouts. In terms of COVID-19, we have maintained very strong prevention protocols. All our employees are tested weekly. We also have provided molecular testing capacity for the clinic that's in the local community so that we can have community members get tested. And virtually all of them work for us. And so that's on the social side. On the environmental side, we knew that it was imperative that we build this project to a world-class standard. And we devoted a significant amount of effort in ensuring that we protect our employees' safety And we've had, for the 10 years we've been there, when we started our construction back in 2018, every year since we've started our activities in earnest there, we've been able to lower our lost time injury frequency, and we achieved the lowest yet last year. We wanted to ensure that we built the project so that we didn't harm the environment. And for instance, we double lined the tailings impoundment because it's world-class best practice. Mm-hmm. We covered the crushed ore stockpile with a dome. The reason we did that is because we did not want high wind events creating a dust problem in the region, particularly since we have lead in the ore. We also cover all the surface conveyor belts, and all the other, the entire process plant is covered as well. So that's on the environmental side. The governance side, as we brought the company private, from private to public, we then turned our attention to making sure that we were deploying proper governance. And it was a huge issue for us in the IPO. So recently we appointed our first non-executive chairman, Janice Stairs, and she's also the first woman to join the board. We have now appointed a director from Latin America as well to join the board. And all of these things, I think, have helped us to demonstrate our intention to be very attentive to ESG.
Interesting. So you said it was important during the IPO process. Was this, did you find that you were getting, I don't want to say pressure, but inquiries, or, you know, were there a lot of questions around these issues from investors?
No, because we were private, one, we had a very small board, and so we weren't getting any pressure to do it, but we knew that we needed to be attentive to it as part of the IPO and when we became a public company.
Yeah, great.
Dean, I had one further question if I have a minute.
Oh, go ahead.
Or comment.
Yeah,
you can. I think it's very important for the panel and the audience to understand part of the governance. I believe everybody on this panel would agree with me that, you know, a very important skill that we need to consider, not only from a corporate standpoint, but in Mexico is gender equality. So, you know, and I call it qualified gender equality. You're not just going to go out and get gender, and men and women got to be qualified to do the job. But you know, from a corporate standpoint, we have some targets internally for gender equality. Currently, 50% of our executives are women. I think this is a great balance. And about 30% are women on our board. So this shows emphasis. And again, we didn't jump on the gender equality, you know, terminology that's out there now. We were already doing it. Okay, so it just only makes sense. And from a Mexico standpoint, you know, my daughter is a VP of Silvercrest, and obviously a woman. She turned to me one day, and we were underground in Las Chispas, early days, and she turned to me and she said, "Dad," or boss, she calls me dad. She said, "You know, if we were here 50 years ago, this would be illegal for me to be underground." Okay. So, you know, yeah, women were not allowed underground in Mexico. Okay. Yeah. And she actually said that a woman, one of her employees' mothers was concerned that she was underground, because is it really legal for you to be underground? Okay.
Right.
I'm here to say that we have a great, you know, team of both men and women in exploration integrated throughout the operations. You know, one of the key positions that's building our mill right now and will be a manager of the mill is a woman. I've known her for years. She worked for me at Santa Elena. You know, this was 5 to 10 years ago. My daughter, she has gender equality throughout the geology and exploration side of things. So again, I love the diversity and skills, and this is important, you know, from a governance standpoint.
Oh, congratulations on those stats, Eric. Those, forget about mining. I think across all corporate, globally, corporately, I would say those are benchmark numbers. Taj, as a TSXV company, do you find there is any difference, as a smaller company to around ESG, or do you find that you're getting more and more these ESG strategy questions?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dean. I was going to bring that up, but more from the side of being a late stage explorer going into development versus a substantial amount of these stories as developers or producers. I mean, listen, our market cap is quite significant, 700 million market cap. There's some big funds into the name, lots of institutional holdings. It's completely an important thing to do. It's something as my fellow panelists have said, we've been doing for years. But it's the investment community kind of now asking for it, and but we've always continued to do it. There's a common negative view of mining being a dirty industry, and the industry's worked really hard to clean up its reputation, becoming safer, more efficient, more sustainable. But an interesting thing is, for example, this year we're going to be putting out our inaugural ESG report, and you wouldn't think of a explorer or developer doing that, but it's such an important thing. Really to document it and really to show that these have been our practices for a while. ESG is part of our scorecard, a significant part of the corporate scorecard, et cetera. So it's from that point of view, I did want to point out that even as a late stage exploration company, it's very important.
Great. No, thank you, Dash. Jason, do you want to add anything to this conversation?
Sure, Dean. I don't think the concepts of ESG or running a corporation responsibly are lost on this panel. So one might ask the question, why has there been such an appetite for the discussion from investors? Well, the first thing we should recognize is we have new investors that are returning to the resource sector that we should be delighted about. Unfortunately, we are not perfect, and there are examples of things being done improperly that have destroyed value for investors in the past, and that they are looking for a way to protect themselves against. And so the new metrics that are being considered by various institutions, the appetite for the discussion with investors is really around trying to recognize how some of their investments of the past have been reduced and how they can protect against it. It goes without saying that a project that does not benefit the local communities in the country where it resides is not sustainable. We all recognize that. A project also has to benefit the shareholders. And so that's really where the genesis of the ESG questions come from, is they want you to have a sustainable business. And what running a company responsibly does is it protects you against those catastrophic events that can destroy the company and hence the value to shareholders. And I think that there's a new understanding amongst leaders and resource companies that in how to run a company sustainably and hence responsibly. Two things I've noticed that have changed recently. One is how we communicate about the things that we are already doing. And some of the panelists have spoken to that. And so we've had to grow our ability to translate the things that we're doing in a way that is clear, consistent, and transparent to the investment community. So I think we are improving as an industry how we communicate what we're doing in a clear, consistent way. The second thing that I think we need to embark on is be open. We can all articulate the different ways we've helped communities across the globe in the areas where we've worked. That's a very long list. We all recognize that. But we need to be open to how we can improve our industry past where we are today or where we have been historically. Things like electrification, greenhouse gas emissions, gender equality that was spoken of. I mean, some companies may be doing it well, and Silvercrest is an example of that, but I can assure you there are other companies that are not. Yeah. And considering ways that we can get the capable talent in the diverse nature into our organization is how we can improve. Because frankly, the populations to choose from are just not there yet. So we need to retreat back to some of the early educational systems and provide incentives, and companies can do this so that the outcome in a few years from now is that we have more diverse workforce to choose from. So I think the panel has emphasized that we have for a long time behaved in a responsible way, but what's different now is the investors' appetite to hear more about it. So what we're improving on is our way of communicating that to our investors, and our way to look forward into the future and understand what the rest of the world is expecting from us, and how we can adapt our businesses to do better over time.
That's great. Great point, Jason. I think that sums it up quite well. I think one of the challenges in the mining sector for decades has been our communication skills. We've just never been, mainly because we're made up of geologists and engineers and people who get things done rather than people who talk about things. And so, that's always been a challenge. And Brad touched on it earlier about just how integral mining is in the general evolution of mankind, civilization growth. And you can't have a cell phone without talking about mining, but so much of that is lost. And a lot of the generation I don't know what to call them, Generation Xers or whatever, but the youth don't always get that very clearly. And we haven't done a great job of marketing ourselves and communicating how integral we are to growth and everything going forward. So we're doing better, I think. And you're right, this ESG embracement is forcing us to do better. And obviously, I think there are a lot of companies, you mentioned Silvercrest as a great example, but certainly in mining and in engineering in general, benchmarking is certainly something that we all know works pretty well. So it's great that we have companies showing the path. So it's good to see also junior companies jumping on board at Discovery. No offense to call you a junior company, Taj. I was just referring to stage of development, not market cap. So Warren, we covered that off pretty well. Or you want to add anything to finish us off on this one?
No, I think the points made are very telling and very, very important. The one thing I'd like just to reinforce, from our experience, we've been in Mexico for over 10 years, especially in the Velardena area, and with a very strong relationship with the community, as being an important employer locally for the community, and with a very strong relationship with the ejidos there. Well before ESG became so important to investors. But I think Jason's point is very, very important, that we didn't do a very good job communicating that to the rest of the world. And so that's on us to have a more transparent communication of that. But I think I agree with the other points made. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to the other next question here. It's almost impossible to talk about ESG without talking about productivity and technology and how important that is in changing the way we do business, and because they are connected. And, a lot of the environmental concerns around our sector can be changed, can be made better with technology and the way we operate as governance. And, we talked about scorecards and all that. Technology is playing a larger role in mining and entering into areas that were not expected. And I guess that's the impact of technology generally. It changes the way you do things. Ralph, do you want to talk about that a bit?
Sure, thanks, Dean. Technology is obviously something that one should really look at and explore new ways to try to improve your operations. We're doing that at Campo Morado. Campo Morado is an interesting volcanogenic massive sulfide ore body. It's refractory with gold and silver, so we have a hard time getting the gold and silver out of it. We get about 15% recoveries in gold and 30 to 40% recoveries in silver currently. There was some testing with a new technology that was developed by a group out of the UK called Malguin Engineering. It's called the Leachox process, patent technology. It's been in operation in several mines in Africa. And this process was tested at Campo Morado, and first phase testing went really, really well. It actually increased gold recoveries up to 60% and silver recoveries up to 80%. So those are big increases. So we've got to take this through second phase testing. We're just designing that program now. We hope that it will come in and allow us to start making much higher recoveries in a very difficult, from very difficult metallurgy. And also, they've developed a new process. I'm not sure if it's new, but it's called the imaflot flotation, where you use microfine grinding, which helps you liberate your metals. And this system is said to recover much better amounts of gold or lead, zinc, and copper. So we're going to exploring that as well. We hope to be able to really improve Campo Morado because it's a large ore body, and it is actually very high-grade precious metals for a VMS-style deposit. So if we can unlock that value, we're going to really increase the profitability of that project. We also have a tailings disposal facility where the past production was not able to recover that gold and silver. And we think we could potentially reprocess that and recover that as well for an added revenue stream. So these types of things, I think one has to keep an eye open for them, explore them, and see whether they can actually help the operations. And that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Ralph. Warren, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'd like to talk a bit about the biooxidation plans that we have for Velardenia. Much like the Campo Morado problem, we had very low gold recoveries from our pyrite concentrate at Velardenia, low payables if we sold directly to the smelter, and the gold is encapsulated in pyrite and arsenopyrite. And your choices of processing technology are either very expensive or require a much larger resource base because of the capital cost in general. But biooxidation, which is basically using a bacteria that metabolize sulfur to artificially oxidize the pyrite and arsenopyrite in a vat type environment. Now, this allows us to go forward on a sustainable and low carbon footprint basis, really, compared to autoclave or roasting, for example, a much more environmentally friendly, and get recoveries from in the low 30% recovery in general to up over 90% recovery after biooxidation of the pyrite concentrate at Velardenia. So we see this as unlocking tremendous value for us. And it's an example of applying, it's not exactly a new technology, but it's new to Mexico, it's new to North America. Mm-hmm. There's not a single operating biooxidation facility in North America that I'm aware of. Mm-hmm. It's well accepted in Australia, it's well accepted in Africa. It just never quite took hold in North America, given some early bad experiences, basically. So we're really looking forward to completing the feasibility on that for Velardenia, and we see it as a tremendous value adder to the project and for the company. So that's an example of applying a new technology, if you will, to solve a metallurgical problem, much like Ralph was talking about.
Interesting. No, that's awesome. Congrats, Ralph and Warren, for those examples. That's pretty impressive. I wanted to put a question out there to the general group to jump in if you have any ideas. But talking about technology and ESG, particularly around community engagement and the positive impact that mining has on the communities we operate in. There is a lot of conversations going on recently about the risk to that stakeholder benefit in the communities if technology is pulled along and replace many jobs. Truck drivers, operators will be replaced by mining, implementing more technologies. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Any ideas? How is that really a problem? Is that something that's going to be an issue in the near term for us? Can we not have one and have the other? So,
Dean, this is Steve. I'll just make a comment on deploying technology and how it ties into ESG. I guess in our case, as we were building the mine, we incorporated best technology. But one instance of where we gave significant consideration to our employees on that was in the underground environment. So the discoveries that we've made in that area, the area has a very high geothermal gradient. And so as we develop this Cerro Los Gatos mine deeper, and it comes to within about 75 meters of the surface, and then extends down to about 450 meters below the surface. But as we extend at depth, the heat quotient in the mine goes up. So we designed the first surface refrigeration plant, and we just finished constructing it and commissioned it last summer. And it made a huge difference in the ambient temperature in the mine. And this directly reflects on our concern. It really was driven by our concern that we provide a safe work environment for our employees, and one where it is an environment where they can work productively. Mm-hmm. So all our equipment is completely enclosed. It is, they have independent ventilation systems, refrigeration in the trucks, and in the drills as well. But in addition, we have refrigerated the air in the underground. It's made a huge difference in terms of our productivity in the underground mine. We have a second refrigeration plant planned. The deposit extends for 2.5 kilometers from the northwest to the southeast. We have just commissioned the northwest plant, and we will soon be commissioning the southeast plant as well.
Excellent. Excellent. No, thanks for that. I think that's a great example of how they are interconnected. I don't think there's it's not one or the other. You can have both. And I think a lot of the work that's being done now around, like Eric yourself mentioned, the education programs and the scholarship programs in the local community. I think this will prepare workers for the new technologies that are coming down the pipe. So certainly they are interconnected, and certainly one helps the other. We have about 5 minutes left, so I wanted to use this time for us to address that 20% that's left on the board. We all talked earlier about how great it is to do business in Mexico for various reasons. And, I think we collectively, I'm going to say we average at about, this panel will give business in Mexico a grade of 4 out of 5 currently. And so there's 20% to go. How can we get there? What would your advice be to the Mexican government to attract more investors and certainly, I think we can all agree that mining is going to be a large part of Mexico's growth going forward. How do we get mining to realize its true potential and let everyone say Mexico is the best place to do business, period? Do we want to start with Ralph?
Yeah, thanks, Dean. I guess I would say something to the government that you need to get some committees or surround yourself with people very knowledgeable in the mining industry. I think a lot of government decisions are driven obviously by politics, but if you narrow down and get into the best things to do for the industry, that's surround yourself with people that are knowledgeable in the industry. Get some cabinet members that are, or form committees that can help advise the government, and hopefully the government would listen to those committees that are extremely knowledgeable in the mining industry. I think that's a really good first step to try to get government policy doing better for the industry as a whole.
Thank you, Ralph. That sounds like advice that could go well up here as well in Canada.
Probably everywhere with politics.
Warren, do you want to take a go?
I'd like to focus on one particular aspect that would improve the outlook for mining in Mexico, and that's the lifting the current moratorium on new concessions. Really, it just doesn't work to have that restriction in Mexico, and it puts off investment, it puts off new exploration, it makes life extremely difficult, and it really has to come back in so that you can acquire new concessions. This idea and notion that everything's been found is absolutely incorrect. We know there's lots more to be found in Mexico. New concessions is the lifeblood of sustainability for mining. That's got to change. And in hand with that, the registry is in Mexico. The mining registry is terribly inefficient, and it really needs to get with the program and get the paperwork through the pipeline. We have things that we're sitting on requests into the registry from years back that have still not been taken care of, and I'm sure all of us have the same experience. But those two things would go a long ways in enabling Mexico to have more sustainability and to attract more investment in the exploration field, which would be in turn excellent for mining in the future.
Thank you, Warren. I would say elephant in the room. That's great. Thank you for bringing those up. Appreciate it. Brad, why don't we have your comment and then we'll finish off with Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. I think the best way to improve our performance to 100% of possible growth, because what we're talking about in this panel is growth opportunities in Mexico, is really to remove the barriers to growth. And those are primarily barriers to investment. So Warren touched on one, which was the freeze on new mining concessions, but there's many other barriers that I think simply through better and more regular communication with the current administration, hopefully they'll start to recognize that barriers need to come down. So taxation. I mean, we're already at 53% total tax burden, which is more than most Western democracies. I don't think we're going to win that argument in a quick moment, but I think we have to engage a process of showing what more investment does ultimately to the bottom line. That more investment, more jobs, more tax income. Obviously, this government is still fairly new. It's only just over 2 years into its administration. And I think we need to engage in that conversation on an ongoing basis. Another barrier to investment is that the current administration actually disabled the position of Subsecretary of Mines. So that basically reduced its communication with the mining sector. The reason for that, I think, was political, not anything to do with mining, more to do with Mexican politics. But again, that's a conversation that needs to be resumed. So removing barriers to investment is really the main path, I think, to bigger and better growth opportunities in Mexico.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. Thank you for mentioning the Undersecretary as well. We share your opinion on that one. We had some pretty useful communications with him over the years. Disappointed to see that. Hopefully they'll find someone new soon. Eric, you have the final word here. We're a minute.
Well, I'm a 5 out of 5 here, guys, but always room for improvement. I agree with all the panelists there. You know, those systems need to be worked on. We spend a lot of time on IVA, which probably is not necessary, you know, and that takes away from productivity on what you should actually be doing is finding, permitting, discovering, permitting, constructing a mine, and not chasing receipts throughout the system and then waiting for IVA to come back. So we're now, some of our IVA has been sitting with the government for over 1.5 years. Okay, so this is not an appropriate way to conduct business around a value-added tax that you should be receiving back. So I just asked the government, you know, get that system to a point. I know they're working on electronic instead of hard copy. Well, accelerate that and give the mining companies some relief around the IVA. You know, it's a roadblock, really. Mm-hmm. Okay. My final comment to the government would be, watch what you say to the reporters, because it impacts us worldwide. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as Brad said, this is a young administration. there's a lot of inexperience, I feel, within the administration, and I like what Ralph said too. Great comment. Bring some knowledge to the table when you start talking about the mining industry on the world platform here. So watch what you say to the reporters. Come with knowledge. Talk to your mentors. Talk to people that know about mining before you put something out in the news release, and it impacts everybody on the market. Mm-hmm. Short term, there's a knee jerk. I get a lot of calls. Eric, is this really true? Mm-hmm. and so that's not the best use of my time, and I don't think it's the best use of anybody on this panel.